What does it mean to have the home court advantage? Is it the psychic boost you get from playing in your own building? In front of your own fans? Is it the familiarity of your surroundings? The comfort of sleeping in your own bed? The restorative properties of a home-cooked meal? What if you played in a place where the home court advantage was the court itself? A court that had seen countless game-winning shots, miracle comebacks, and heart-stopping moments. A court where titles were won and legends were made. A court that was as internationally famous and recognizable as the team itself. That kind of home court advantage could only belong to one team, the Boston Celtics, and their singular parquet floor.
I think the parquet floor is there with, the Green Monster at Fenway, and maybe very, very few other places in the world that's just instantly recognizable, unique, and soaked in championships.
There's no other floor like it in sport. In fact, there's no other surface in sport that's quite as famous.
Well, I think that's the first thing that catches your eye. Most floors are pretty standard, but when you see the parquet floor, it's different. It's symbolic of the Boston Celtics, and I had a lot of fun in the old garden, playing on the old floor.
The old floor was a fun place. I mean, the whole atmosphere at the old Boston Garden was a very, very special place, and I have very fond memories of that. And part of it was just playing on an old floor.
Teams recognize it's kind of a different place to play a game. The atmosphere is just different. All the big players who play in this league, they hold, the parquet and the garden in general. There's a certain reverence towards that.
I can go anywhere and the TV can be on, there'll be no sound, and I know we're playing. It's so unique and identifiable. There's nothing like it.
Walter Brown selected the oak parquet floor back in 1946, and he wanted to be different.
The legacy and the history of that floor dating back to World War II, the construction of it, being a product of what wood was available at that point in time, and that parquet paneling being a result of the size of actually the wood pieces that you could get at that time. That stuff's all, part of the history that we would never want to see changed.
Well, we're the only floor that's oak. Everything else is maple. So it's just a different look from the beginning, and you immediately think of the floor and the logo and the team in green and white. The floor is part of it.
Now, as the Celtics begin the process of creating only the third parquet floor in team history, you can finally see what goes into the making of the most famous surface in sports. You can discover what it takes to build a court where champions play. The decision to replace the parquet wasn't an easy one. After all, there were so many memories, so many ghosts.
The first game I actually attended was when the Celtics were playing against the Washington Wizards in Michael Jordan's last appearance in the Garden in his retirement year. I walked out onto the floor, I sat courtside, watched that, and I was just kind of blown away by the whole thing.
I think of June of '08. We go in at halftime, we're leading by over 20 points, leading the Lakers in Game 6, and looking down at the floor and realizing I'd be stepping out on that to get a trophy. Just gives me goosebumps to this day.
I do sort of remember one thing about it was getting all the confetti stuck to my shoes on the floor, because over by the bench, the floor was all sticky from where Paul had thrown the Gatorade on Doc at the end of the game. And I can remember my feet were like sticking to the floor, and I can remember turning over and looking at the bottom of my shoe and seeing all this green confetti.
Ultimately, wear and tear in a new NBA regulation were the deciding factors.
The NBA mandated last year that every NBA court had to be replaced every 10 years. The first thing that came to my mind was, is the Celtics up for replacement? That's how important it is.
We had a couple chips in the floor. We said, you know what, it is getting a little beat up and a little worn down, so it's probably time for a new floor. But anything you cherish, you're reticent to let it go.
If you're going to replace one of the most iconic floors in the world, you don't do it without a lot of planning and consideration. And you don't do it without the people who replaced the original parquet.
The original parquet floor was retired in 1998, and Connor Sports supplied the new floor. And that was unique because that existing parquet floor had been in existence for so long.
So for us to be involved with the first court and now the new court, we're excited.
They're the same people that we've been working with for years at Connor who've done previous versions of our floor. So it was easy just to say, listen, they've done our floor in the past. We don't want change. We like the way it is. We want to get a vendor who can do it the same way it was so that if you're a fan walking in the garden, you will not know the difference.
I don't think there's any other surface in sports that means as much to a team or to the sport as the parquet at Boston Garden. The floor itself is a defining feature, so it's a pretty neat experience, and it's important for Connor to be a part of that.
Entrusted with the sacred task of creating the next parquet floor once again, the team at Connor went to work.
For the Celtics project, when we received word that they were going to be doing a floor again, we sent back on paper what the floor would be incorporated with as far as the woods. Once that was decided and agreed upon, we sent a physical sample of the floor and of the finishes that will be used. A panel layout was generated for approval, as well as actual paint samples and finish samples of the final product.
First question is, when does the floor have to deliver? So kind of go backwards off of that, making sure the panels are manufactured on time, that they are sent to Praters to be put together and finished on time.
First thing is to source the oak, the grade that we needed, because with this floor we wanted to show character, so there's a certain grade we're after.
After selecting oak from the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, the process of building the new floor began.
At our plant, we take raw material that we receive from sawmills all over the upper Midwest, and we take it from there.
When we get them, they're random length, random width. If it comes green, the first thing that we do is we go through the stacker shed process to get it up on sticks. And then it goes to the yard to get that dry time. For the ripsaw process, we will take the random width boards and rip them to a desired width. After the ripsaw process, it'll go through the surfacing process. Then it'll go out to our defect area. We'll take out the big knots, we'll take out the voids, the cracks, and then it goes down to our molders.
And from that point, it goes through our regular production line. It gets trimmed to size, circles through our machines to put the tongue in a groove, and defected, graded, and then from there fabricated into panels. We've got a specific department just for portable panels. There's a series of easels and construction jigs to assemble subfloor panels, which are prepared for our flooring attachment by our guys back at the plant. TD Garden sent us boards like this. Those are the original floor that goes back to like 1948. They're having us replicate this right down to every detail that we can. There's a real nice old piece in here that's got the real yellowed old game line in it. You can tell it's been around forever. It'll be a good contrast because it's going to show all new boards, and then it'll show pieces in there of the old floor. What the guys are doing here, they're padding the panels, and that'll give the floor a little bit of give, a little bit of resiliency for the players.
There's a tongue and groove holding the boards together, similar to a puzzle, and they're nailed down where just below the surface, so you can't see the nail. And each board is nailed exactly the same way to promote uniformity in installation.
And from there, it's basically a high quality trimming operation and such, because the panels have to be pretty much dead on to make the floor come out and look as it does.
Everything about this floor is pretty much custom to the Celtics and what they want. So the size of the panels is unique. They're 5 foot by 5 foot. Normally we're more of a 4 by 7, 4 foot by 8 foot.
There's 264 panels in this floor. Normal portable has closer to 220 panels, so we've got a few more panels here than we would in a normal floor.
Once the floor is manufactured, it's loaded onto pallets and sent by flatbed to our finishing site.
The milling and construction phase now complete, it was time for the delicate finishing work.
Typically, a portable basketball court that is brought in here will take 3 weeks. The process for the Celtics court has taken about twice that long. Parquet is a different animal. It takes a lot more time and attention to sand a parquet floor. Every other board, 50% of the floor, is running perpendicular to the court, so it makes it difficult to sand. A blank canvas is what we call a floor that has been sanded and sealed. And at that point in time, you can make that court look however you want.
The actual painting process takes about a week.
Following the painting process, we then abrade the paint. It's kind of scary because you have to abrade the paint to allow the coating to grab onto and have something to adhere to. So we actually come back and sand the painted surface before we apply the finish coats.
I was getting a lot of video updates from the production. I can remember being in Europe and you know, with the team and looking at pictures of, you know, the floor being painted and manufactured.
We receive a graphics package from TD Garden and the Celtics team, and we kind of go back and forth making sure that the game lines are accurate. We make a layout showing them full dimensions of the floor, the size of the logos, make sure everything is exactly how they want it to be, that nothing is in the wrong place, that everything is the right size, nothing's too small, nothing's too large.
Once the floor is all laid out and sanded, and we start to stripe it, everything starts from the center, from the half-court line, and everything's measured out from there. After a series of measurements, you get the out of bounds, you get your lanes, your three-point arches, and then you start measuring out for all your logos and the placement for those.
The straight lines, people can probably imagine how those are done because they're straight. The curves, we got a machine actually. It's designed specifically for taping out game lines on basketball floors. This machine has a radius pole that has a fixed point on one end, and we're able to swing the machine around a fixed pole while tape is being rolled out under the wheels. The vector files are taken off of the layout and put into our cutting software. Our cutting software basically traces the vector lines with a razor blade onto a piece of vinyl. And that allows us to create an exact stencil. Once we have it cut out, we have a big table in our shop that we were able to weed out the colors we want to paint originally. It's as easy as peeling the back off, sticking it on the ground, and rolling the black.
After that, the floor is cured for 10 days before it's loaded on a truck. And when it arrives at the TD Garden, it will be ready to assemble and play upon immediately.
It wasn't just about maintaining the mojo of the original floor. It was also about preserving the legacy of the man who made it famous.
When Red passed away, we sat around and we thought about what would be the most fitting tribute we could provide, you know, to Red, such that his legacy would last. You know, we did the patch on the uniform, of course, but it was really Wick Grossbeck's idea to put his name on the floor, and we'd never put anything on that floor before. We thought that was about as authentic a tribute as we could provide. And of course, no one ever has or probably ever will win as many championships on that, you know, on that parquet floor as Red Auerbach, so he belongs there.
And it means so much that when Red passed away, I said we would put his signature on the floor. And that's how much it means to me, because Red Auerbach means more than anybody else really in the history of this franchise.
It's such an honor for us, you know, to be able to see it every time we look. When we turn on the TV or there's a game or there's a press conference or something and you see the signatures, you know, it gives you a sense of you well with brightness, because it's not very many people have had that honor.
The original Celtics court is found under Red's signature, and that's where it needed to be.
And so those boards are there, and they're great players, not only Celtic players, but think of players that were in here from great players from all the other teams that at one time or another took shots off those floors, dove on those floors, or maybe even the famous Red Auerbach stomp on the floor when he didn't like a referee's call. There might have been some cigar ashes, right, on some of those boards.
It's one thing to finish and paint a brand new floor in an old knitting mill in Chattanooga, Tennessee. It's quite another to get that floor shipped to Boston and installed at its new home in the TD Garden.
We'll start essentially from camera view in the bottom right, and then kind of go from bottom up, working our way across the floor. There is a steel tongue and groove, so every panel has a 5-foot run of steel on two sides with a pin that attaches the one panel to the neck. So we kind of line up the holes and drop the pin in and kind of slide it closed, kind of like a door, and then drop a pin on the other side. We have what we call, I guess, quick change panels where the bolts kind of back out and we'll lift out the top layer of oak and kind of swap out from the nationally televised logos to the regionally televised logos back and forth. And this way they can do it in probably about 15 minutes. I'm a New Englander, born and raised in Connecticut, so it's something I grew up watching on TV, watching the Celtics play. So for me, it's a really neat experience to be here in this building with this floor. If you told me 20 years ago that I'd be sitting here in Boston Garden helping install the new parquet, I think that'd be a pretty cool thing to do.
If you're a Celtic fan, you know what the parquet floor means to Boston. It's as much a part of the fabric of the city as the Bunker Hill Monument, the Zakin Bridge, and the Swan boats. So it's no surprise that seeing the new floor in place for the first time was an emotional moment for everyone who had a hand in its creation.
Athletes strive to win the gold. Athletes strive to win the trophy. This is our trophy.
When you're standing center court, looking down at the logo, looking at all the fans in the stands, the enormity of the event, I think it's gonna be a wow factor.
When it's something that we've done, that we've touched, that we've been a part of, there's really no words to describe the joy and pride that you feel knowing, hey, we made this happen. And then everybody else is watching the game and you're watching the floor.
I think it's wonderful, and I think, as I said, the floor is so iconic, and to keep that going and to put the little pieces from the old garden floor, I think it's such a lovely thing. It parlays the legacy into the next generation.
I think it brings out what the Celtics are all about. Different. It's been there since Russell, so if it's good enough for Bill to play on, it's good enough for me.
The Celtics have a unique family, and all the players feel it, and I think that's what Celtic pride is. And you take pride in the legacy, you take pride in the championships, you take pride in the arena, the team, the whole sense of what was built here, because it was like no other place.
Now a new season begins, and along with it, another chapter in the long and rich history of the Boston Celtics. Except this time, there's a new member of the family, a descendant of the old and a product of the new, combined to form the greatest home court in basketball.
That's kind of a great way to marry, the history and the tradition with the move forward on to the next championship.
Back in the day when Bird and all those guys were playing, the floor was the same, the parquet floor, and so it's cool to be a part of that tradition.
Ingrain some of the original floor in the new floor to keep the DNA going. Just continues the tradition, and it makes it more powerful.
It's an honor to be able to say I played on the parquet, and and I'm a Boston Celtics, so you know, if you're playing on parquet, you're definitely playing in Boston.
Knowing all the work that went into it, all the thought that went into it, all the effort from a lot of people, it's going to be really cool on opening night to see that new floor and seeing the players run out on that floor for the first time.
Like its predecessors, this latest iteration of the fabled parquet floor is sure to be a place where champions play.
You know what, if you have your calculator, but I gotta, well, let's see. I could do it if I could crunch the numbers. Well, I'll tell you what, there's 264 panels. Start with that times 4. I'm trying to calculate how many bolts are in this floor. I could do it, but I'm just trying to think. What did you get so far? Minus 44, then minus another 12, and then minus another 44. I think that might be it. What do you come up with?
There are 1,024 bolts in this floor. Ooh, no wait, there's 1,014. What did Randy say?